Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a webinar and corporate update on CleanTech Lithium after the company announced its latest results to the brine assays on Francisco Basin yesterday. We're going to be running through those results in a second with the company and then having a discussion on the research update note that we put out yesterday and some of the assumptions that have been made by my colleagues Gaius King and Mark Heyhoe, who are joining the call. So this afternoon, we're delighted again to be joined by the company's CEO, Dr. Aldo Boitano, and the company's chairman, Dr. Steve Kesler. I'd just like to take one step back and to reiterate why we really like CleanTech Lithium as what we think is possibly the standout junior lithic company. Fundamentally, we are still very bullish on the lithium market. I think the Clean Air Act was passed in the US Congress the other day. There's considerable funding in there for the advancement of EV vehicles. There is a fundamental deficit of lithium that the world still has to wake up to. With CleanTech Lithium, when we took them public, the fundamental investment thesis was the company had 1.2 million ton resource based purely on Laguna Verde. And the company had yet to drill on Francisco Basin. We thought that the resource number on Laguna Verde substantially underestimated potential because it was based on going down to just 600 meters and across horizontally, whereas we believe that geologically it's probably likely to be much more deeply stepping, and the resource estimate was based on just the surface lake representation of the asset, and it didn't follow the mythology of the basin. With Francisco Basin, there had been no drilling. At 30 pence a share, we were trading at approximately $20 a ton in situ value. And if you look at the peer groups, there were a number of deals being done north of $100 a ton. And we think one of the other companies that is a potentially peer comparison is Lake Resources, and they were trading at the time at about $180 a ton. We believe that the assets in the company have the potential to be more than about 4 million tons. And we think there's going to be an increase both in Laguna Verde, and now we have the first drilling results coming back on Franciscan Basin. So we believe there has the potential to grow the resource from the 1.2 to north of 4 between the assets that we have today. And then there's also the potential to add in further assets as we go forward. And we also believe that as we develop the project, do these drilling campaigns, get the results, go into initial pilot study, bring in strategic partners, that we'd be able to close the gap from the $20 a ton in situ value to north of the 180 that some of the peer groups are currently trading at. So that was the fundamental things that we were looking for. But with that, let me pass to Aldo and allow him a chance to give an update on both the results and the company's response and view to them. Aldo.
Yeah, should I put the presentation up?
Please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. So, well, we're very pleased with the results of Francisco Basin. The results are more than we expected. We know we were drilling deeper and a consistent grade that we sampled while drilling with the traditional TDS, total dissolved solids on the ground. But it was a very happy surprise at 305 milligrams per liter average of lithium with a high of 324. It brings a whole another area, another basin into the lithium triangle, and adds nicely to the development we're doing in Laguna Verde. We've always told the market about the investment highlights, the importance, and Daniel already touched on that, of this sustainable lithium revolution for electric vehicles that are happening around the world, with various governments being very upfront with reducing or putting a near end to traditional combustion cars and vehicles. And on that, we're added a lot of important things for the investors, that it's the proven team, that it's now fully staffed. We've been working on all the projections of the ongoing things we're doing. We're talking with the government here and on the support. We see forward going with the projects, and at the same time, we're really working hard on making a message to the market with our green credentials. all the work we're doing and working when I work with renewable energy, and the fact that our technology uses the water can be re-injected back in the brine, etc. We'll open and tell everything as the presentation goes on, especially with the high news of Francisco Basin, and we'll leave some time for questions after that. This is a snapshot where we are. We added a third project farther north, a Yamará project, to our traditional Laguna Verde and Francisco Basin projects, who are in the southern tip of the lithium triangle. Yamará project, it's a vast area. It's 357 square kilometers, and we're yet haven't drilled there. We have a geophysics and existing data that suggests that there's brine and lithium there. But Laguna Verde is the more developed project with 67 square kilometers. Francisco Basin, the news are coming out, and we're going to be updating the market in the next 2 to 3 weeks on the resource estimate for both, for Laguna Verde and Francisco Basin, your compliant resource estimation. The board, again, and not only the board, the Chilean team, very experienced. Steve, I don't know if you want to have a word about yourself and the work you have done.
No, just that I've been in the mining business all my career with both majors and juniors. A lot of that experience was in Chile with Escondida, and I was the first CEO of Collahuasi, getting that into production. I've been a CEO of a lithium company in Austria, listed in Australia. So covering both aspects of lithium and Chile, I was very pleased to come on board as chairman.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of experienced people from around the world, especially the technical advisory board. I want to stop a little bit. Marcelo Bravo with Ad Infinitum is now doing a very detailed scoping study. And Pedro Torres with Beyond Lithium has been the leading provider, and it's turning into a partner of the DLE technology that we're currently developing, and I'm going forward with the pilot, the planning of the pilot plan. Again, the numbers and the importance. Steve, you want to touch here again on this part?
Yeah, I think the big thing, particularly in the European market, where there are a whole raft of new battery projects, it's very clear that the EU wants to decarbonize its economy, but it's pushing the battery manufacturers to decarbonize their supply chain. So here we can see with the use of renewable energy, our carbon footprint is very low compared to the traditional hard rock or brine evaporation techniques. And we think that's going to give us a marketing advantage and potentially lead into premium pricing into the European market.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's get to the projects. This is the slide that presents the project, but this is the footprint of a month and a half long drilling campaign to leave that tiny little yellow cased hole that we can later sample and do all sorts of studies with it. That's what it is, and this is the extent, in this case, of Laguna Verde's mining rights that we have. How that tiny little borehole relates to the big space. Going to Laguna Verde, we completed 4 holes. Again, we have a your compliance resource estimate of 1.2 million tons of lithium at the average 246 milligrams per liter. That's the average grade on the lagoon itself. We've already drilled, and we would put it into the market of up to 409 milligrams per liter, the deepest samples we found. There's all the holes had temperature, because this is a geothermal spot, and that also will impact some of the projections we're making with the DLE, direct lithium extraction work that is going ahead for the piloting plan, because that temperature helps and reduces some of the energy requirements. And so we're very, very satisfied. It's still our flagship project. And you can see at the bottom the brine aquifer thickness. We drill deeper than we expected. And then at the same time, we find higher grades than the grades we had in the lagoon. So this will be coming up, like I said, in the next 2 to 3 weeks before the end of August, along with Francisco Basin upgrade. And Francisco Basin is the exciting news we have. We just drilled FBO1, again, deeper than we expected originally. The results came better than we expected. You can compare in the market, we'll show it later, what other companies' grades have and the resource they have, and we're very, very optimistic. And the market today has reacted very well to this announcement. We drilled the hardest part of FBO2 up to down to 150 meters. That's where we're going to encounter the subsurface aquifer. It's a semi-confined aquifer, or confined aquifer. It means it's above 1 atmospheric pressure, so it will explode and it will jump all the way up to the tower when we hit that, and we just don't want to do that because the winter was coming, and we want to do and recommence the hole specifically in that spot and hit the aquifer and then release the pressure down there, and then go as we did with FBO1 down, and then continue with the rest of the drilling program. The scoping study that Ad Infinitum is doing on Laguna Verde. It's starting now in Francisco Basin, and then we'll follow up by all the traditional engineering work, the PFS and the really detailed work. We're really working hard to move these two properties into the future with not only the scoping study but also environmental studies, and then getting everything planned for the PFS that will start soon. Yamara, we're very excited. Yamara, it's in farther north. It's closer to Salar de Atacama, and this has very interesting geophysics. The more magenta color show a lower resistivity or a high conductivity, and that means that there's a high indication of brine. There's also surface lithium samples that have been collected, and we're planning a field trip in the next coming weeks to start looking into different areas of drilling, the access roads and everything. It's next to an international highway, and it's very flat and an accessible area, and we're excited. It's 375 square kilometers. That's a big piece of land that we, with the hard work, we have the mining rights. We're waiting again for the next couple of weeks to start planning, and then hopefully drilling in October, November. I'm going to stop a little bit with direct lithium extraction. It's a low impact, a sustainable way of drilling with lithium. We already finished, and the market saw that all the lab tests to produce 1 kilo of battery grade, certified battery grade lithium by international labs. We worked in the past with leading companies, including Lilacs and Resin Summit Nanotech, and we ended up partnering with Beyond Lithium, who has been doing very successful work in Argentina, in Alpha Lithium, public news of their work there. And we're now working to go to the pilot scale production with a strong engineering team, both with Beyond Lithium and our own team of various people that we've brought into the company. We entered into a cooperation agreement with Beyond Lithium to acquire the technology and patent everything under our brand, our CleanTech, and that's what we're doing right now. We're doing everything for this 12-month project of a pilot plant with the on-site to produce lithium at battery grade every month and everything, and then that will be the basis for the plant itself when we plan to move into production. There's a clean energy for processing this. It's very important. I was involved in the development of 3 large projects accounting for more than 1,000 megawatts in Chile, and there's very, very good infrastructure in this area because of all the mining development that had been, and also it's a path into Argentina. So we've talked initially with all the clean energy providers, and we're looking into a power purchase agreement, a PPA, to sustain all the future development. Again, road access, really easy to connect it to the green, and that's very important for us. Chile, it's a world leading in renewable energy country, and we're already past 50% of all our electricity being produced by renewables, and a big percentage of that are recent developments. The water supply, it's important for the DLE process. There's existing bores drills in both basins with more than enough water that we need for the work. This will be used in part of the direct lithium extraction. Again, the spent brine or the brine that will pass our process will be re-injected back into the basins. Next 12 months, the catalyst events. I don't know, Steve, maybe I can pass it to you again to speak about this. How excited.
I think the important thing to recognize is that we will get share price re-rating as all this positive news comes out. First of all, resource estimates on both. We will then be going into issuing the results of the scoping study to demonstrate that the project has no red flags. The technology is very applicable to the type of brine. We're working on the design of the pilot plant at the moment to demonstrate that at a larger scale we can make battery-grade lithium. The pre-feasibility study will be starting very shortly with world-class lithium expertise in the engineering company. And during all of this, we will expect to attract more and more attention from potential strategic partners. Now, clearly, we have not given any offtake agreements to any third parties yet. We prefer to hold off on that until we find the right strategic partner for our project, which will not only be an off-taker, but also a provider of the construction funding, or a large portion of the construction funding to get us into production. And we would expect that over the course of the rest of this year and into next year, those discussions will accelerate with potential partners.
Thank you, Steve. Gaius or Daniel, the CleanTech key data.
Yeah, well, this actually comes back to another one. We'll focus on to the resources. Gaius, I think, is currently joining us from South Africa, and he's had a little bit of problems with his numbers there. But the key thing I wanted to bring back here is that when you go through the key institutional shareholders and the founding shareholders, we have approximately, that makes up about sort of 45–50%. And then when you look at the other major institutions such as Miton, RAB Capital, JCAM out of London, Regal, who are all long-term investors, you end up with about sort of 70% of the company in long-term investor hands. Actually, Aldo, since you've been talking, we've gone up another sort of penny. So we're now back up at 27.5. So we're up 22% on the day, up 5 pence on solid volume of about 800, almost 900,000 shares, or about 400% on the average volume for the last sort of month. And the reason that actually only 1 million or 800,000 shares, so what are we talking there, less than about £180,000, is that there really isn't a lot of stock available at these prices. We had some early seed investors that, with the market pullback, did come out in the early weeks, and then I think the market has been waiting for these new results. But the key thing to take away from this slide is that over half the company is in very long-term holders' hands, and another 20% is in long-term institutional hands. So the free float is not very much. So it won't take a lot more in terms of marketing to really start to get the stock to move. Aldo's been joining us from Chile, and the company's been extremely busy on working on doing actually the work on the ground. It's always a challenge for CEOs and for the rest of the management team, between Steve and for Gordon, the company's CFO, to balance between doing the work and out marketing. But we're about to go into another phase of marketing and going out to London shortly, and we'll mention about the appointment of Canaccord coming on as joint broker at the end of the presentation when it comes back to me.
Okay. This is the valuation structure comparison. If Gaius is not here, I don't know if you, Daniel, or Steve want to take on this.
Gaius, are you able to join us?
I'd love to have a quick chat about this. I'll just apologise up front. I'm currently in South Africa at the moment, doing something else. Are these the latest? Is this the latest table that I? No,
This is the end of May 2022 information.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. Well, basically, look, just to reiterate the latest company announcement, and just to say how excited we were. The water and the power assets, at least to power 10,000 tonne of a lithium carbonate equivalent up to 20,000, is within 2 kilometres off the site that you would probably build the plant. Just reiterate, all the power and the water within 2 kilometres. And that's a big consideration for a DLE process because it's more of industrial, front-end industrial, and you're not relying on evaporative processes. And in the interim, actually, CleanTech has just got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And actually, I know this is an old one. So what we did is we assumed we added in the 600,000 my colleague here calculated, and up to the Francis. And the in-situ value is actually only about somewhere between 7. Hang on, I've just realised I'm unstable, so I apologise. It looks like I'm saying I'm unstable. Between $7 and $4 a tonne lithium carbonate equivalent. There is no company on the face of the earth that has any resources remotely close to the value of this company. Jump in, Mark, if I'm breaking up too much. So we just want to reiterate and that Francisco Basin, I believe now, is probably the best project that CleanTech have. It's close to infrastructure, it's up to 2 million tonne, we think, and that's very conservative, and Mark will talk about that. And this is a process that works elsewhere. So look, just from this project alone, these guys could be in cash flow positive within 4 years if everything goes well. They'll probably tell you it's going to be 2 or 3, but let's be conservative and say 4 or 5. But it's real. This project is real. And the other thing, it doesn't have an option agreement like Laguna Verde. It's not going to be as large as Laguna Verde. If you do some rough numbers in Laguna Verde, it's well over 3, I think, from memory. And I still think that the grade that they've measured is lower than what's actually in the center of that basin. But at 300 milligrams a litre, Francisco, and in the nearby infrastructure, Francisco Basin is basically the only real producing DLE project that I know of globally, that it hasn't pressed the button yet. And just to reiterate, I won't say the exact names here, but I've talked to a couple of MDs and they couldn't get the power to run a DLE process at their site. So the fact that there's excess power ready to go is just fantastic. So this is a massively underappreciated, undervalued company, and it has to be on top of everyone's list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aldo, if I can just jump in there for just 1 second. So we did put up a research note out yesterday where we updated all of those numbers. It's on our website. I believe it will be on the company's website fairly quickly. But just to reiterate the point that Gaius was making there, that yesterday, on Monday morning, before we put it out, CleanTech was trading at effectively $11 a tonne in situ value. We're back up now at about 27.5. So without the additional news result, we'll be looking at trading at approximately about 18. We have some estimates and numbers, which we'll go on to at the end of this, which I'll come back to with Mark and Gaius. But that would put us down at about, with the additional resource, back to about 13 versus an Explorer peer average of about 45. So we think that actually we are a better project than some of the averages in there, and that we're slightly higher. But we think there's at least a 4 times uplift in valuation just based on the current resource numbers we have based on the one well. And then at the end of this, we'll talk about how our team have extrapolated out what we think the exploration potential is of Francisco Basin. But as Gaius said, whichever way you look at it, this is the cheapest publicly traded lithium company that we can find globally. Sorry, Aldo, please, back to you.
Yeah. This is a summary of all the presentation. We have a de-risk path to production, again, with a low environmental impact. There's no indigenous communities. There's the lowest CO footprint in the market because of where we are with the solar access and renewable energies, and then direct lithium extraction combination. We have a short lead time to production. We're targeting production 2024, 2025. We've mentioned everything, and also a very supportive government of mining, along with what I already said of the infrastructure in indigenous communities. With this, we'd like to stop sharing and ask you guys any time for any questions you might have, and leave some time for that.
There we go, just jump myself back in. We have some questions out of, I'm going to bring that back at the end, but we on our note, Mark is one of my other colleagues who works alongside with Gaius. Mark is also a geologist. Gaius is more of a structural geologist. Mark is more of a resource geologist with a PhD in geostatistics. Mark's put some sort of numbers together. Mark, do you want to just talk about what we've done, about what we think is a potential resource number for this one well, and then, as we know, the drilling locations for wells 2, 3, and 4, if we extrapolate the same results and what the likelihood is of the results being the same in those basins, what we have as an exploration target, because I think it's very good for the people watching to get a sense of what the potential of the two main assets could be.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a very simple sort of calculation we've done based on all the information that's in the RNS and what's in the historic results from the Laguna Basin as well. And in it says we're going to extrapolate the results of this hole out for 2.5 kilometers. So what we just calculated was the volume of that cylinder and multiplied by the grade, the thickness, the 204 meters. We assumed an 11% yield, which is what was assumed in resource of Laguna, and the grade of 305, and that gave us a resource, an inferred resource, and my classification, it's not obviously signed off by anybody, of about 715. Now this does impinge on the national park to the north, so we excluded quite a wide buffer zone around it of about a kilometre to the north, and that gave us our own internal estimate, an inferred resource of about 613,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent. Now we know that that's the first of the 4 proposed holes. The other 3 don't really impinge on the national park. But if we assume conservatively, I mean, maybe not as good as this hole, 60% as good as this hole, we're still going to get a resource for the 4 holes inferred of around 2 million tonnes, which is far better than what we were expecting. And that is, assuming the additional 3 holes we drilled are only about 60% as good, either in thickness or in grade, as this existing hole.
If you went to 100%, if you went to, so I mean, that's us taking some number at 60. And again, I must stress, gentlemen, that this is Fox-Davies' own internal number crunching. This isn't from the company. This is us just looking at spreadsheets using basically a fairly standardized approach to calculating the volume. But if you were to assume that it came in at 100%, Mark, where does that sort of put the number? That puts us up at 2.5 or closer to 3, or?
Yeah, it's about 2.7 million tonnes.
Okay, this is where, gentlemen, I get interested, and I'm a shareholder. After we had the RNS out yesterday, I was back in the market buying shares. Is that what I want looking for the company to get to is between sort of 4.5 million to be similar to Lake Resources. We have a higher grade, but if we end up with something around about 2 million on Francisco Basin, we're expecting in the coming weeks to have the resource upgrade on Laguna Verde based on the excellent results that the company put out earlier in the year. We're at 1.2. We'll see how that resource goes to there. But I think as Gaius was saying, the testing work we've done is just to define the edges of the basin. We think there's a lot of potential to go a lot deeper in the middle. So we'll have a resource upgrade there. It still opens to what that would be, and I think there's further work. Then if over the next 12 to 18 months, we can add a resource of anything between 1.5 to 2.5 on Francisco Basin, that will take the company significantly over the 4 million, if all those things happened. And I think that's where the potential lies. And then as we progress through in terms of developing it, we can close that resource value.
I'll just reiterate. I mean, that resource estimate is purely based on me reading what's in the RNS. So I've got no, access to the drill core or anything like that, which I'd normally do if I was going to sign something off. It's just purely based on what's in the RNS.
But it's a fairly standardized.
Yeah, it's a simple calculation. Yeah. It's pretty contiguous. You just calculate the volume, convert it into lithium carbonate equivalent.
Okay, Mark, and thank you very much. So guys, I mean, look, you've been a huge supporter of this from day one. In terms of the results and what you were hoping for, do you want to discuss briefly, I think 2 things. One is it might be good because you follow it very closely. your view on how the lithium market is going to continue for the next 6 to 12 months, and how these results fit in terms of what you were hoping for as an analyst and how it impacts. And then lastly, if I could ask you to address, we put out a price target for 1 year and 2 year. And I think it would be, if you could just talk a little bit as an analyst on what assumptions you've made in that and what you're hoping to see over the next 6 to 12 months for the company.
Sure. I guess I'll just reiterate that the lithium sector has been hit hard because Goldman Sachs put a sellout on it. There was a whole lot of assumptions they made on low-grade sources out of China, these low-grade sort of pearlites, I think they were called, completely unrealistic. Can I also say with the lithium market, it's purely producer-consumer. There's no trading. So unlike the copper market, which Goldman Sachs very much and pushed it higher, a lot of that was financial trading and financial speculation. The lithium market, there is virtually no financial speculation. That price at the moment, which has been flat despite all the other commodities coming off, that truly reflects underlying demand. What is that demand? That demand's been driven by electric vehicles, and even though those numbers are dropping, there's not enough lithium to go around to power them. So this is what was it say in Australia, a fair dinkum market driven by fundamentals. It's not by speculators. When we value, hang on, I'll address the Francisco Basin. I always had hopes for Francisco Basin. I never included it in the valuation because it had never been drilled. It had lithium on the surface and it had been previously drilled, but it was under pressure. There were drilling problems. They have been addressed. And I just say that Francisco Basin results have exceeded my wildest expectations because they're so close to existing infrastructure. And you have to remember that lithium is not like mining. It's a bit more like oil and gas. It's a processing platform. That's why these things can get into production a lot more easily. The grade doesn't vary that much within the basin. It's relatively uniform. So Francisco Basin has exceeded all my expectations. And I personally think it's a better project for a number of reasons, which I won't go into, than Laguna Verde. What was the last part? Oh, valuation. The valuation, I've basically assumed $20,000 a ton lithium carbonate equivalent. I'll just say that it's currently trading at 70. So I'm valuing it at basically less than a third of the current value that's out there. And I think that shortages to exist at least until 2030 and most likely far beyond. I think it's good to take a long-term view and be conservative because this is a small company. And in fact, you could argue I've been ridiculously conservative, but even still, you know, you've got valuations far and above what the current share price is. And that only basically reinforces the value proposition that we have here. If this thing was Lake Resources getting toward production, those in situ values, and they're not at $16 or $13 a ton. If you include Francisco Basin, the exploration and the targeting, it's more like $4 or $5 a ton still. These things would be $170, $180 a ton in situ value. So this company is not being valued on cash flows, but the point I would make is that these projects can easily get into cash flows at a lot quicker pace than you normally would expect for a traditional mining project. So there are a lot of differences. The resources are quite consistent. They can production quite quickly. And the other key thing is there are not many of these projects left around the world. The Chinese have come in and they're just buying everything they can get their hands on. Everything. And the key thing about Europe is that they have no lithium realistically to make this transition from internal combustion engines into electric vehicles. So this is something quite amazing. And I think we're very blessed to have it as a client. So thank you.
Guys, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's tricky in terms of the reception of where you are. We have some questions I'm going to come back to at the end. The other point I wanted to make is that last week you would have seen that Canaccord was appointed as a joint broker. They had an excellent conference on DLE and they'd reached out to the company. Now, Canaccord is a significant and one of the leading firms in terms of junior actually, well, just in terms of mining, corporate finance and brokering globally now. They're obviously a strong powerhouse in Canada for many years. They've had a very strong presence in London. And then a couple of years ago, they bought Patterson's in Australia. And I think they've been responsible for well over, I think, half the deals done. Now, they don't usually get involved in a company at the current market cap of CleanTech Lithium. I think we do an excellent job. We did an excellent job on the pre-IPO and running through the IPO, but we're very much here and focused on a number of institutions. Canaccord will obviously be looking to issue research in the coming weeks. They also got to do their work and time, and it's August and the holiday season, but they do have, I think, tens, if not hundreds of sales guys around the world and a fantastic reach in terms of distribution. So that's going to be a huge plus in terms of helping get the story out to a broader audience. A couple of questions that I just wanted to address. People have asked about sort of marketing. The company's been on the ground. Aldo will be coming over to London in the next coming weeks. We'll be hosting a lunchtime presentation in person again back in the city, and we'll be going around initially just to give an update to the existing shareholders who were very supportive in both the IPO and the pre-IPO, but we'll also be going out to meet with a lot of potential new investors and just telling the story. Whenever we go out and tell the story, we get a positive response. However, there's only so many hours in the day or week, and Aldo's currently in Chile. So we're very thankful for him coming over, and we were chatting this morning just about the days and the itinerary. And we'll be doing a lot more marketing now between now and the end of the year. One of the questions that comes up quite a lot is when they do an offtake. Steve, I know you mentioned on it briefly, but can I just come back to you, please, sir, and ask, at what point do you think it would make sense for the company to seriously engage in a number of offtake partners? Obviously, we've spoken in prior webinars and in presentations that Aldo has done and Gordon's done that we are being approached by a number of people. But obviously, there's an optimal point for the company in terms of timing between focusing on proving up the resource and then entering into serious discussions, because obviously it takes up a lot of time of management to be going into those discussions.
Yeah, my past experience in many different commodities and developing projects, you're in the best position as a company when you've got real solid information, and that's at the PFS stage. I think in this particular case, where lithium is in such a deficit in the world market, we will be getting a lot of approaches when we have the results of our scoping study, because that will use a scoping study to make sure there's no red flags, nothing which can impede the development of the project. And that's when we will have the first real guide to a valuation of the project. We need to have that valuation of the project to seriously talk to a potential strategic partner to ensure that when they do come in, it may be post-scoping study, it may be post-PFS, but we're maximizing the value for our existing shareholders and making sure that we choose the right partner.
And so just on the current timeline, obviously, you know, as with a lot of cases, things are slightly there, and we are about sort of 4 or 6 weeks behind from the original timeline IPO. But if we just go over between now and year end, we have the updated resource statements, which we're expecting. We'll then be looking to go back and do the further drilling program. When over the next sort of 12, 18 months do we get into that PFS stage?
Well, the PFS timing is into next year. We need to complete the scoping studies. Yep. But most of the PFS will be completed by the end of next year. But I really do believe that there are going to be a number of strategic partners, and the ones that will be approaching us are the battery manufacturers, clearly the trading houses, car manufacturers, and mining companies going into the lithium space. They'll all be pricking up their ears at the results coming out of CleanTech Lithium to see that not only do we have a potential large lithium basin that we totally control, but we have 2 basins, and we have a 3rd exploration area, which is very exciting for companies wanting to secure supplies of lithium. So the moment that they can see there's no red flags, we're going ahead with this project, post-scoping study, we'll be entering into those discussions. So that's from towards the end of this year into next year.
Steve, thank you. That was actually in response, sorry, Jay, to your question in terms of timing. I've got a couple of interesting questions that come in. Heinrich Nixon was asking which DLE solution. Aldo, would you like to do a little bit of further conversation on that?
Yeah, the DLE solution we have, it's a ionic exchange based on absorption via alumina-based resin. It has that's at the core of the solution, but it's based on micro filtering at the beginning, then the absorption part, then reverse osmosis, then forced evaporation, and then ionic exchange to remove the traces of materials like boron and so on. At the same time, he had the question of the rates of magnesium and potassium. Our technology with the current ratios we have can deal with that and have deal with that at both at the lab scale and we're thinking of the pilot plant going forward as well. Again, we partner with Beyond Lithium. We have the support of Sun Resin from China for all the developments. They have 3 running projects. Direct lithium extraction is not new to the world. It's been around 20 years in Hombre Muerto via Livent, the company Livent doing that in Argentina, and Beyond Lithium has successfully done this in alpha lithium at a large scale also. So working very hard. There's a lot of engineering work being done with a lot of flow charts and processes and very high level meetings to work on the different stages that will get us to the pilot plant.
Okay, excellent. And then I think there's the last question there, just from Heinrich coming in about how often you can use the balls. I don't quite follow that, but you may do.
Yeah, this is the amount of cycles that you have. We see only a 5% replacement over time, over every year. That's how long it will last. It's really the investment of the initial resin, and then it's, like I said, only a 5% replacement over the years. There's a lot of conversation in the market. We've been, as Gaius says, not only cautious or conservative on the resource and the places, but also we haven't made much headlines about our DLE work. But we intend to change that and be more upfront with the market. And this webinar is a good opportunity to share what we know and we have done. And we're really at the front end of many companies that are doing this. We started in 2017 with direct lithium extraction work. So we think we're ahead of many others.
Can I just jump in there briefly?
Yeah, please.
And just there was
Gaius, we're still having a little bit of problems with your audio. Can I just, Gaius, can I just suggest maybe if you turn off your camera, because we know how lovely you look in there on that side, then we might be able to hear you a bit closer.
Is that a bit better?
That's better. We can hear you clearly now. Thank you.
Okay. Can I say there's a lot of talk about how CleanTech might be 4 or 5 or 6 weeks behind. Actually, I would say they're almost 6 to 12 months ahead. At the time of the IPO, Francisco Basin, where they are now, wasn't supposed to occur for another 12 months. And it's accelerated massively. They've done far more drilling than they previously announced at the IPO, 8 months with Francisco Basin. So actually, this company is actually going miles ahead of where people are. It's just that the market hasn't woken up to that yet. And I think people underestimate how important Francisco Basin, and I would go as far to say, because it's so close to infrastructure, this will probably be the first producing asset of CleanTech, not Laguna Verde. So yeah, I cannot emphasize how important this last announcement was for the company.
Yeah, there's a couple of more questions of the ballpark level on the OPEX per ton. We've been working with a wide range of calculations, but it's anything between 3,500 to 4,500 US dollars per ton. It's part of our admission document. You can check on the AIM listing. It's 10 to 20 more than the lowest evaporation pond work, but at the same time we're looking at a lower capex with no construction of evaporation ponds and just the pilot plant. So that will And with the current prices, these numbers are very good, and it will be for a long time. And this is the path forward: direct lithium extraction with the grades, and the world needing more clean materials for the EV revolution. Direct lithium extraction, we believe, is the path forward for many companies. We just feel we started earlier than others.
Thank you. Right, gentlemen. Well, thank you. I think if I may, I'll just wrap up. So the main point to take away is both the company and us as one of the company's brokers now are absolutely delighted by the results. North of 300 was just phenomenal and way ahead of anything that we had hoped for. We think we have a number that we think the resource estimate on just this first well of Francisco Basin was, Mark, I think it was 615 from memory, but yeah, if you extrapolate that out to the other 3 wells that are going to be drilled, if they came at 60%, we'd be closer to 2 million. If they came at 100%, it would be 2.5 million. And that's actually still based on inferred one of a 2.5 million radius. If you get to measure the numbers, that actually changes some of the dynamics as well. But that's the sort of range of Francisco Basin. And as Gaius was saying, it's very key to remember that Francisco Basin is less than 2 kilometers from an existing power station with excess power. That is just incredibly fortuitous for the company, but it makes a huge difference to the economics and the ability to put it in. And in many ways, it now for us, as a brokerage house and as the analyst side, to think that Francisco Basin becomes the more compelling of the two. And Laguna Verde was an outstanding project to start with. So we are 10,000 shares just south of doing 1 million shares in volume today, and it's moved us about 22%. So 200,000 has taken us 20%, and the day before, I think we were 273,000 shares from memory that moved us. So we've moved about 26% on a 240,000 pounds. Aldo will be coming over to London, to Europe. We were going to go out. Every time we go and see more people, we get interest, we get buying, and on a very small volume now, I think this company will start to really move. I appreciate everybody taking the time to come on board. Ourselves and Canaccord will do a job in terms of taking the company out to the larger institutions. But what we really need to do, and we'd like everybody's support, is getting it out to more and more of people's friends and associates and other people in other buying clubs. Some of the early shared investors have a Telegram group that people are welcome, and they've been fantastic in terms of promoting the story out today. But again, all additional help is very much appreciated. Aldo, is there anything else that you really wanted to add on for this side?
No, again, exciting news. We've been working very hard. There's a lot of work happening here in Chile and abroad, involving the developments, and we asked everyone to trust us that we're going to deliver by the end of this month the both resource updates, and hopefully the market reacts as positive as yesterday's announcement. It's a lot of work behind, and just very thankful of the response today.
Fantastic. Well, I very much hope to see you in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully you'll be in London around about that resource comes out. So everybody here, if they should be on the distribution list, if they're not, please get in touch. But we will be hosting a in-person presentation and update to both existing and new investors before the end of the month in London. And we look forward to having an updated webinar shortly after the next set of results before the month end. Everybody, to Steve as well, thank you. To my colleagues in London and South Africa, thank you very much. And to everybody for joining, appreciate your support.